Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 31.
Congratulations, you showed up. Give yourself a high five in celebration of your success. Welcome to the Cashflow Diary, where new and experienced investors come to take confident action towards their goals. Your host is a family man, a real estate entrepreneur, investor, coach, and instructor. As a master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's Cashflow 101 game, he's inspired many to begin their journey into creating cash flow for themselves and their family. And now, here he is to offer you the tools required to earn the income desired. Your cash flow coach, Jay Massey.
Well, hello there. Glad that you have joined us one more time. I know that you're excited if you are excited for the upcoming holidays. Well, that's part of what we're going to talk about, because I know what can happen during the fourth quarter is that a lot of us may decide to say, I can take time off and start next year. No, there's still time left in this year. So that's what we're going to be talking about, is how to get the most out of the next 60 days via the techniques known as time management. And more importantly, let's just call that resource management. With that being said, if this is your first time joining us, feel free to go over to learninvestingnow.com, learninvestingnow.com. Place your name and email in the box, and you'll start getting our free e-course on learning how to do wholesaling. It's basically a process where you learn how to buy and sell property using none of your own money or credit. If that interests you, feel free to go over to learninvestingnow.com, get your free course, and get started now. Also, if this is your first time, feel free to listen to episode 1 to understand a little bit about how we operate and what it is that we're all about here at the Cash Flow Diary. All right, let's get right into it. Today's cash quote is, I am definitely going to take a course on time management just as soon as I can work it into my schedule. I thought that was a little funny. It comes to us from Lewis E. Boone. He was a United States academic author. That means he literally wrote textbooks on business and economics. And I just thought that was interesting that, he said, definitely funny for sure, that, you probably said something similar, right? I will go ahead and get that course on time management. I'll get started on that thing as soon as I can work it into my schedule. And one of the things that, we definitely want to be aware of is that we all have as much time as we need to get whatever we need done. And that's just one of the core things. So it's not a matter of working it into your schedule. It becomes a matter of many different other things that we're going to be talking about here on this particular episode. All right. So what do I mean when I talk about resource management? Well, in order to even think about resource management, you must think about what are the resources that I have available. In general, I tend to put the resources into 4 different categories. Now, there are more resources than these, and I'm aware of that. But I tend to think of them in 4 different categories because that's just kind of how I was taught. The 4 categories are knowledge, time, money, and credit. Knowledge, time, money, and credit. Those 4 resources and some derivation thereof are required and used in every real estate transaction, dare I say, in every business in some way, shape, or form. But the one that you're probably the most concerned about is time. You said things like, Jay, if I had more time, I would definitely be able to do this real estate thing. And nothing attacks time like, the holidays or the fourth quarter, right? And, we've got, Halloween, you got Thanksgiving, you got a whole bunch of other festivities, be that Christmas or Hanukkah or Christmaka, whichever one you like. And we've got demands on our time. We've got expectations from those that know us, those that we've known before we were real estate investors, those that know us now. There are just certain things that you should, that you're now expected to do. Well, one of the things that I want to share with you to help you make the most of this time is that doesn't mean you can't go to the kids' recitals and the birthday plays and the all the other things. In fact, going to them is one of the best ways to begin to spread your influence and, most importantly, your network, so that people know, what you're doing. Because one of the unique things that happens in human conversation is, hey, long time no see. What are you doing? You know, we tend to use this time to catch up with people. So it can become a great time for you to just introduce people to the new version of you that you've been, working on for all this time that you've been listening and learning, etc. So in my opinion, time management per se, I don't know that there's such a thing because I can't manage time. I can't manipulate it, so to speak. I can't make it stop. I can't make it go faster. And there have been times in my investing career where I've wanted both, where you want to make it stop, where all the rent comes in. You're like, ooh, yes, I just love that feeling, right? Or, there have been times where you want it to go faster when, you find out something, bad has happened, or more importantly, a vacancy occurred. You're like, oh, how do we get over that really quickly? But what it comes down to, in my opinion, when we say the word manage, it's just more or less a priority. It comes down to a mindset. We've got to decide what's a priority, because you and I, you probably already know this, but you and I only get 24 hours in any given day. That's it. No more, no less. So we're all given the exact same amount, and it's how you and I prioritize, those hours, minutes, seconds in a day, right? And that's what makes the difference, in a year. How do you measure a man's life, right? And it comes down to what he or she prioritized. And so what it comes down to is that some of the things that you expect of yourself should be changing now that you're a real estate investor. You should still expect of yourself, even during this time, to write offers. You should still expect of yourself to accept offers, to open escrows, to close escrows, because you're now paid for generating a result. And no better time than right now to generate that result, right? Because after the end of the year becomes the beginning of a new one. And I know one of the number one New Year's resolutions is, hey, I want to lose weight, right? And then the other one right behind it is, I want to make more money. And the deals that you close in January and February are going to get started now, clearly. The investors you find and that contribute capital at the beginning of your new year are going to be probably some of the ones you find right now. And so now is not the quote-unquote time to take off, so to speak. So another piece of that whole time management is also, what you expect from your team. Because if you're working with, lenders, lawyers, and employees or contractors, etc., you still need to set time expectations for them, because they may be thinking, hey, it's the fourth quarter, Thanksgiving's coming up. I don't really need to move as fast. And that may or may not be true depending on what you are asking them to do, but it's definitely something you want to think about. You always want to work with the principle of what, when. Always ask people, what are you going to do? When are you going to do it by? And now, like no other time, you don't want that question unanswered, because if you leave what and or when unanswered, then they're free to answer it in any way they like. And then what ends up happening is that you feel like you've lost, time. So, and just as a side note, one of the things that I've been using recently, I'm sure many of you have figured out, or at least know, that I've been doing lots of traveling recently. In fact, right now I'm in Miami, Florida, which is cool. And we started using in our company a app by the name of Voxer, Voxer. Started using it probably 1 or 2 months ago now. I don't know. And it has been awesome because it allows you to talk to your team members or anyone, technically. You can leave a little voice message that gets sent via like a walkie-talkie via Wi-Fi or an internet connection, no matter where the person is. So if you're in Estonia and you're talking to people in the U.S., it works. If you are in a meeting and then you don't need to be bothered right now, but someone can leave you a quick message and you can respond. Why this has become a time management tool is something I want to share with you. This is part of how you should begin to look at your time. You say, well, I can just make a phone call, Jay. That's true, you can. But literally, how long does it take to dial the number? That's assuming you know where the number is in your phone. But let's just assume you do. How long does it take to dial the number? How long does it take for that call to connect? And then when it connects, especially in the US, because you can't just answer the phone and go, hey, this is what I need. You have to say, hey, how you doing? Introduce yourself, be polite, nice. And then 1 or 2 minutes later, then you can actually get into the actual, this is what I need, right? Especially when it becomes the inner office communication. So it's become a way for us who work virtually to have quote unquote inner office communication that allows us to save 1 to 2 minutes every time any person has a question, comment, concern, or just needs to say something. And one of the things I like the most about it is that I can, with one message, send it to like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different people all at the same time. It's awesome. It's really good. And guess what? If you didn't understand something, you can play it again. And here's probably the biggest piece is that because it's your voice, there are things that are communicated when we speak that a text message or an email just could never, ever, ever, ever do. And now you don't have to worry about that. It's pretty cool. So think about that when it comes to time management, always looking for new tools to help with that. And then probably the most important skill set when it comes to managing your time is just having the ability, dare I say, courage to stand up under your own decisions. Occasionally, we get challenged into making decisions, making them quickly because we're concerned that we're going to make a mistake. Well, make the mistake. That's better than making no decision. Just make a decision as fast as you possibly can, because then after that, at least you have the benefit of wisdom. Your wisdom is what occurs after you've made a decision that didn't work out. So keep that in mind. One of the other resources that I was talking about is money or credit. Now, I'm going to put money, credit, as well as equity all in the same little category. What does that mean? Well, in this particular case, money and or credit simply is exactly that, money and or credit. But it comes down to understanding economics a little bit. Now, I didn't really major in economics. As many of you know, I didn't even finish college. But in high school, I remember something about economics being a science of unlimited wants versus limited resources or something like that. One of you will send me an email with the actual definition, I'm sure. Anyway, and that's when it comes down to understanding focus. That's literally how you can work when it comes to managing the resource of money or credit. What do I mean by that? Is you and I must make more choices about where to apply our energy. Now, in my opinion, money is just stored energy that we get to release every time we use it to obtain a good or service from someone else. So just keep that in mind. So in this case, when it comes to money or credit or equity, some of the things that you want to be thinking about are leverage, return on investment, inflation, as well as taxes. Now, all of those 4 topics in and of themselves are hours long conversation. Obviously, we're not going to be talking for hours this time, but when it comes to leverage and return on investment, you want to be thinking about, how can you achieve more with as little of your own or as little of that resource as possible. That's kind of where leverage comes from. Is like if I can use the least bit of my own but still achieve the exact same result, then that's part of being able to manage my unlimited wants versus my limited resources. In the U.S. anyway, the financing allows us to do that. As many of you know, I just came back from Estonia not too long ago, and their financing isn't the same over there, which is neither here nor there to this particular conversation, but because they have the same unlimited wants, their resources are that much more precious because, when you have to put, 20, 30, 40% down versus, less, it makes it hard you got to make better choices immediately because you don't get to play the game as frequently as we might be able to do so in the U.S. simply because of our leverage structure. Return on investment has to do with the speed. Think about that in terms of speed, how fast you get your money back. Now, there was a question the other day that I saw, what's more important? So here is something that I'm going to ask you. What do you think is more important? Is it more important to have return of your principal or return on your principal? And, you're going to have to answer that question, but I'm going to suggest that return of is more important than return on. So the question becomes is how soon can you get all of your money back? Because by my definitions, you don't make profit until after you've gotten all of your money back. So you may make an investment today. So let me give you some real numbers. So if you made an investment today of, I'll just make up something, say, let's call it 100,000 or 200,000 or whatever, $100,000. The math is easy. And in the first year, you got $7,000 back. Technically, by measuring return over investment as cash received over cash invested over 12 months, you got, 7%. Great. Wonderful. However, you haven't made profit yet because you still don't have 100% of your money back. So the question becomes is how many years of earning $7,000 a year would you need before you have your $100,000 back? Just do simple math. Take 100 divided by 7. You're going to come up with a number. That number gives you how long in years it would take before you, quote unquote, are in the profit. Now, what does that mean? That means if it was your only $100,000, you would have to wait that long before you would be able to duplicate that same type of deal that you just did again. That's what that means. And in this particular case, what that really means is that you would have to wait 14 years, 3 months, and about 13 days. 14 years, 3 months, and about 13 days in order to make that happen. Now, the question is, are you satisfied with that? I don't know. Some of you may be, and that's okay, because you may not be trying to grow the portfolio as much as you are trying to live on the income. But it's something to think about because you have to be able to, quote unquote, manage those resources, i.e. give priority to what's important. When you start looking at that, you also have to consider, obviously, inflation and taxes. And you're going to have to make decisions on what is inflation and what is my taxes and what would I like them to be. Inflation is one of those things that's a little difficult to control for you and I. However, we can plan for it. We can't manage it, but we can plan for it. And many people, unfortunately, don't. And that's what I learned as a financial planner many years ago, is that many people actually don't plan for inflation. And that's just due to a lack of financial education. Now, you, on the other hand, have the option of choosing to plan for inflation or not. And one of the many ways you can plan for inflation is to have a source of income, a stream of income, if you will, that can be adjusted based upon, normal market conditions. One of the reasons I actually prefer rental real estate is because the renter knows that rent typically goes up. And that's good. That's good for the person who has the good or service that is renting or being rented, right? So inflation or real estate can be used in many different ways to hedge against inflation, okay? And that's the fancy way of saying planning for inflation or money to become worth less over time is called hedging. Same thing with taxes. The good thing about taxes, especially in the U.S., is that not just in the U.S., but you can also do this in many, many other jurisdictions. What it comes down to is that it's almost like inflation. There has to be a plan in place. You have to plan taxes, and there's a penalty for not planning, and that penalty is called paying taxes. You can pay less when you plan, because when you have advisors on your side that tend to tell you and whose job it is to help you either avoid taxes or maximize any sort of benefits that are being given, it just simply comes down to learning and following what it is that they're suggesting. So something to think about there when it comes to managing your resource of money, credit, and equity, etc., is how are you going to attack all of those points? And I've tried to give you a little bit of information on how I do those things. right now. So let's take a quick break over to our cash flow question for this particular episode. And I want to make sure that you have that. So last time, the question was, when selling your real estate, whose perspective is the most important? When selling your real estate, whose perspective is the most important? Now, in this case, your seller could be someone who's buying the house from you and or a tenant, it technically could be an investor as well, who is, who you're raising capital from. But when selling your real estate, whose perspective is the most important? The answer is, of course, your customers and or buyers. Your customers and or buyers. They're the ones who ultimately are going to have quiet enjoyment of the property in some way, shape, or form. And it's their opinion that when they see value in your property, they will exchange that value for cash, which is usually called a sale. This week's question: what is the most common name for the period of time called between your offer being accepted and the actual close date? I'll repeat that. What is the most common name for the period of time called between your offer being accepted and the actual close date? You want to send your answers into cashflowquestion@cashflowdiary.com. Again, that's cashflowquestion@cashflowdiary.com, or send in, or you can call your answer in. It's 800-689-1764, 800-689-1764. All right. One more piece here. We were talking about managing your resources. And one of the most important resources, especially right now, to manage is your knowledge. Remember, I said the resources were knowledge, time, money, and credit in general categories. And now I want to talk with you for a small second, just simply about knowledge. Now, when I say knowledge, some of you may think, well, I already went to school. Let me ask you this. When do you really stop learning? And if you said when I finished school, then you haven't. You're behind the curve. You never really stop learning. The ones that keep growing, the ones that keep changing, the persons who keep expanding their brain in many different forms are the ones that end up with the greatest financial intelligence, the ones that end up with the greatest marriages, the ones that end up with the greatest relationships with their kids, the ones that end up with all the things that you and I admire. Well, the question is, how can you gain more knowledge? And one of the things I like, and I was taught a long time ago, is when I go to a seminar, when I go somewhere, anywhere for that matter, I don't need to learn everything that is being taught at the seminar. Let me say that again. I don't need to learn everything that's been taught at a seminar. Besides, can you or I even remember half of what they said after it's all done? Not likely. However, I do need to remember at least one thing. My goal when I go to a seminar is to make sure I walk away with at least one new actionable item. And then you just keep going to seminars. What ends up happening is that over time, you end up with a whole list of new things that you've implemented over time that end up becoming your business. What does that mean? That means learn from, well, everyone, not just the seminar instructor, not just, the evangelist or the preacher, or not just your teacher, but everyone, the classmates. Learn from the janitor, learn from the secretary, learn from everybody, because everybody's got something to teach you if you're open to learning it. Anything and everything can be a teacher if you let it. What does that also mean? That means you have to be in a mindset where you are actually willing to learn. That means you don't say things like, I already know this. That totally shuts out the possibility of you gaining or gleaning something that could be of value. You got to be in that mindset to be willing to learn. You also have to be willing to accept change. What does that mean? Well, I can tell you one thing. Fighting change or resisting or working to prove how what you already know or think is right will only keep you in the same spot. That only works if you're happy with the spot that you're in, which I'm guessing you're not 100% thrilled with it. Because if you were, you probably wouldn't have listened this far into this particular episode. But the point is, you still have to be willing to accept change. Part of change is doing things differently. Differently sometimes, and dare I say often, is uncomfortable for us because it's something we haven't done before, or we're doing it in a way we've never done it before, or we've never thought about it a certain way. That doesn't mean it's wrong. That doesn't mean it doesn't work. And even if it doesn't work, you still learn something. Remember earlier, if you at least make a decision and it doesn't work out, you leave with wisdom, which is good. Because now you know one more way that it won't work, which is completely fine, which is more progress towards finding the ways that it does. However, you have to be willing to accept it. That means you accept what happens if it goes well, and you also accept what happens if it doesn't. And that's okay, because that means now you have experience, and then therefore you can learn. Anyway, with this particular episode, just remember, the holidays are coming. You know you've got things that are going to eat at your resources, be that knowledge, time, money, or credit. And just keep in mind that you've got to preserve them. You've got to protect them. You've got to be able to still apply and prioritize them so that you can go obtain the goals that you're looking for. And finally, before you ask or expect more of your own resources, get good at using what you already have. Then those who have more than what you currently have will be willing to lend you some of theirs because you know how to put your own to even better use. Until next time.
Thank you for investing your time with Jay Massey and the Cashflow Diary. When you have a moment, please visit iTunes and leave a positive comment about the show. And go now to our website, CashFlowDiary.com, to take advantage of our free business building course, Cashflow Foundation. Gain the knowledge, understanding, and skill that will teach you how to never need a job again. Until next time.